Let's begin with the latest information about the war with Iran. Moments ago, we heard from the defense secretary and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. They provided an update as new strikes took place inside Tehran this morning and as Iran's retaliatory response continues. Here's what they said.
We're playing for keeps. Our warfighters have maximum authorities granted personally by the president and yours truly. Our rules of engagement are bold, precise, and designed to unleash American power, not shackle it. This was never meant to be a fair fight, and it is not a fair fight. We are punching them while they're down, which is exactly how it should be. And as President Trump said, more and larger waves are coming. We are just getting started. We are accelerating, not decelerating. Iran's capabilities are evaporating by the hour, while American strength grows fiercer, smarter, and utterly dominant. More bombers and more fighters are arriving just today. And now, with complete control of the skies, we will be using 500-pound, 1,000-pound, and 2,000-pound GPS and laser-guided precision gravity bombs, of which we have a nearly unlimited stockpile.
All right, during that press conference, they paid tribute to the just identified American service members killed by an Iranian attack in Kuwait. They are Captain Cody Cork, Sergeant First Class Nicole Amour, Sergeant First Class Noah Tegens, and Sergeant Declan Cody. They range in age from just 20 years old to 42. CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata is joining us live from Tel Aviv in Israel. So, Charlie, what stood out to you in this latest update from the secretary and the general just now?
Yeah, Vlad, a few things. First of all, tens of thousands of troops are headed to this region. More bombers are headed here. He actually specifically referred to heavy bombers. So you got B-1s, B-2s that have already been engaged in this fight, B-52 bombers. But then he was very specific about what actually General Caine said, the chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, about stand-in weapons. Motorcycles are still around here, where you have the standoff weapons mean that you're essentially trying to hit the launchers or hit the missiles as they're coming into places here in Israel and places throughout the Gulf, which we have seen, including drones. And now, because they feel that they've achieved air supremacy, air superiority, it means that they can deploy stand-in weapons, meaning they can have the bombers, the aircraft, the fighter jets flying over Iran with relative impunity, and this is what they had to say about it.
We will fly all day, all night, day and night, finding, fixing, and finishing the missiles and defense industrial base of the Iranian military, finding and fixing their leaders and their military leaders, flying over Tehran, flying over Iran, flying over their capital, flying over the IRGC, Iranian leaders looking up and seeing only U.S. and Israeli air power every minute of every day until we decide it's over. And Iran will be able to do nothing about it. B-2s, B-52s, B-1s, Predator drones, fighters controlling the skies, picking targets. Death and destruction from the sky all day long.
Vlad, we have to address it. At the same time, Iran is firing back. Yes, largely going after civilian targets, but spreading fear and terror throughout this region. Something like 14 countries throughout the Gulf here as well. Look, there's been very noisy here overnight and this morning. Very close. These interceptors are in place. Israel has a very advanced weapons defense system in order to take out the incoming missiles. These other Gulf states, not as much, because they're not there really to defend civilian areas, but to defend their own airspace and defend U.S. military bases. So you've got this thousands of Americans that are trying to leave the region, not getting a lot of help from state. There's not a lot of support in terms of that. Another interesting thing, and it was kind of very quietly said that in one of the follow-up questions, I think General Caine said, yes, we are trying to help Americans to get out of the region because it's not safe or it can be risky. And he talked about the deployment of C-17s. Those are cargo aircraft. That's the first time I heard of it. We're going to have ask a few questions about where these things are going and how that is going to be coordinated to get Americans to safety.
And Charlie and Vlad, I mean, you heard the secretary talk about how targeted these strikes are, but, you know, in the Israeli and American bombardment, a school was hit on day one in Iran, and we don't want to forget that. But Charlie, can you just set the scene for us? You just mentioned it's been very noisy this morning. We heard air raid sirens going off during your live shot for CBS Mornings. What is the situation currently, and has the pace of Iran's retaliatory strikes slowed at all?
Yes, Jerika, so I'm trying to put this into a sort of frame of reference, okay? Because we get alerts on our phones where they're telling us that we need to take cover, et cetera, et cetera. That means it's very localized, that we expect incoming, but it also means when the air raid sirens begin, that means they are close to us or overhead, and they're very strict around here, including our own security, that we need to get cover. And in the middle of that live shot, we try to, you know, there's no bad theater here. We try to hold on for as long as we can. But that was right overhead. We actually saw some of the intercepts. That has increased. Now, General Caine said that he had there had been an 83% reduction in the amount of outgoing in Iran. Yes, we had heard some of the explosions and the alerts overnight kind of had a slow. We're getting one right now. We had kind of a slowdown, but this morning the intensity picked up, and it's partly because Hezbollah has been firing back as well.
All right, Charlie, we're going to let you get safe. Thank you so much for your reporting in really difficult circumstances. Please stay safe, you and your team, Charlie. Thank you so much. CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand is at the White House. I just need to take a minute to think about Charlie and the team out there. I mean, this is something that as you said, we heard it during his live shot for us at CBS Mornings, and it's been a constant in the last 4 days. And when those sirens go off, he has to go seek shelter. All right, let's bring in Natalie Brand, who's been standing by. Thank you so much, Natalie. We keep hearing different justifications from the administration about this war. What's the latest from the administration?
So administration officials, including Secretary Hegseth today, are really now leaning into this message of Iran negotiated in bad faith. Secretary Hegseth said, quote, they were scheming and stalling and preparing to strike. He was asked today in that press briefing last hour what evidence, especially given the U.S. and Israeli strikes on key nuclear sites last June. Here's his response to that question about the evidence.
Iran had no intention of actually negotiating a nuclear deal that truly meant they did not have a pathway to the nuclear bomb. And they had a moment. Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, two of the best negotiators in the world, poured into that negotiation, giving them every single possible opportunity to release that ambition. And they didn't. And the intelligence that we saw they didn't intend to do it in good faith, that they had the intentions eventually to get to a place where they could have a conventional shield to block their nuclear capabilities.
And senior administration officials in a phone call with reporters yesterday detailed why they thought those talks were going nowhere, despite progress that was expressed by Iran and mediators during those negotiations. And this follows those comments that Secretary of State Marco Rubio made to our Caitlin Huey-Burns when she asked what was the imminent threat. And he on Monday said that the U.S. had information Israel was going to strike, and there was concern that a retaliatory strike by Iran could put U.S. assets and troops in harm's way. Then he kind of tried to clean up those comments, talking to reporters yesterday, again, talking about these negotiations not going anywhere. The threat became untenable, and the president made the decision to strike. Also want to note, President Trump was asked, did Israel force your hand? And he said, no, if anything, I forced their hand. He thought that Iran was going to strike first. Vlad, Adriana.
And so, Natalie, of course, that is why new CBS polling shows that a majority of Americans disapprove of this war.
Including independents.
Including independents, because of the mixed messaging that we've received from the administration. On one hand, all Americans support our troops, support our men and women who are putting their lives at risk in executing this policy. As General Dan Caine said during the press conference, job of the United States military is not to formulate policy, it is to execute policy. But on the flip side, the polling suggests that the policy decisions that are being made by the administration are deeply unpopular with the president, with the American people. And so, and when you have the president suggesting that there is no timeline to when this war could potentially end, that the United States military has the ability to go on as long as it should desire, that is why the polling is almost overwhelmingly in favor of not being in this war.
Yeah, and that is exactly what the polling reveals, that the fact that there's not been a clear explanation, according to the people surveyed, coupled with the fact that we don't have a clear timeline. The majority of Americans in our poll said, that they do not approve of this, and they don't have a clear understanding of the reason why the operation was launched. But what is interesting to note is the Republican base, even MAGA, despite some critics that have been vocal online, is solidly behind the action. That's something that we're also seeing on Capitol Hill. So a large part of where you're seeing those disapproval numbers is from those independents and Democrats in our polling as this, debate continues in the public and over on Capitol Hill.
All right, Natalie Brand for us at the White House. Natalie, thank you.